Hey guys, welcome to our weekly news show here on Backstage with Millionaires. I'm Caleb, your host, and today we're going to be talking about Dream11's IPO, UPI's microtransaction ban, Paytm's tie-up with the LIC, India's largest ever ESOP pool, all of the latest funding news, including India's latest unicorn, and more coming up right after this. So, I don't know if you guys can hear, but that's an ambulance in the background. And I just wanted to take this opportunity before we jump into the startup news to remind you all to take care of yourselves, please. Things are getting pretty crazy out there, and I feel like it was just a couple of months ago where I was here in front of you all wearing a mask on the weekly news during the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. But here we are back again during the second wave. But in spite of the massive number of COVID-19 cases, things in the startup ecosystem have continued as usual. First up, let's talk about Dream11's potential future IPO. Now, this news is a little bit surprising because just last month, Harsh Jain, who is one of the co-founders of Dream11, said that Dream Sports, which is the parent company of Dream11, wasn't planning on going public anytime soon. But now they're reportedly eyeing an IPO in 2022. It's expected that this IPO would be taking place in the United States and that Dream Sports would be aiming to raise $1.5 billion at a $6 billion valuation. So the question is, why did Dream Sports decide to change their mind? Well, it might have something to do with the fact that Think Investments, which is one of Dream11's investors, recently teamed up with Elevation Capital to launch an SPAC, that's a special purpose acquisition company. This SPAC is called Think Elevation Capital, and Harsh Jain happens to be a board member. All right, moving on to the next news item, but continuing to talk about the gaming space, it looks like the NPCI is planning to ban microtransactions in games that are less than 50 rupees. See, in the last year, the number of UPI transactions that are happening here in India have more than doubled, which of course is a great thing. It means that India's digital economy is thriving. But it's also putting some strain on the UPI network, which has been causing a lot of transaction failures. At the same time, gaming in India is on the rise, and a lot of the transactions that gamers make are less than 50 rupees. In fact, a lot of these transactions are just 1 rupee. And so the NPCI's solution to this situation is to ban microtransactions that are less than 50 rupees. Now, I'm really curious to know if you guys think this is the right solution to this problem or not. Are gaming startups like Dream11, MPL, and MyCircle11 being irresponsible here by relying so heavily on transactions worth less than 50 rupees? Or should the NPCI and banks work harder to scale their systems so that they can handle this increased load? Let me know what your thoughts are in a comment down below. We read every single comment and we try to respond to most of them. And also, while you're down there, it would mean a lot to us if you could hit the like button. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, we post new videos every single week about Indian startups, entrepreneurs, and the latest news. Also, if you want to know more about anything that I mention in this video, then be sure to check out the pinned comment down below where we put links to all of the news items that we're going to be covering. All right, next up in the news, out of 17 digital payments companies, Paytm has won a bid for a contract with the LIC to facilitate their digital payments. Not surprisingly, competition for this contract was really fierce, but one of the reasons why Paytm was able to come out on top is that they offer multiple payment services like UPI, card, and digital wallet. Now, in other Paytm news, they recently expanded their ESOP pool by nearly $62 million, adding 242,902 new shares. The company's total ESOP pool now has more than 2.4 million shares, and these shares are worth $604 million, making it the largest ESOP pool in India's entire startup ecosystem. Next to Paytm's, the largest ESOP pools are Oyo's at $580 million and Baiju's at $400 million. All right, next up in the news, it looks like MPL is betting big take on esports tournaments by acquiring GamingMonk. GamingMonk is a platform that facilitates the hosting of both online and offline esports tournaments for PC gamers, mobile gamers, and console gamers. The platform also supports live streaming and encourages content discovery. And with this acquisition, MPL is planning to host esports tournaments for games like chess, World Cricket Championship, and pool. So far, they've already conducted 4 of these tournaments, which saw 70,000 participants, and the live streams of these tournaments have over 5 million views online. All right, moving on to some funding news now. It looks like Swiggy is in talks with SoftBank to raise between $450 and $500 million from their Vision Fund 2 at an expected valuation of between $5 and $5.5 billion. These funds would be an extension of the $800 million round that Swiggy raised last month. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm seeing another food fight on the horizon here. Amazon is entering the food delivery market, Zomato is all set up for an IPO, and now Swiggy has a war chest. And all of this amidst reports that India's food delivery space could be worth as much as $12 billion by 2022. All right, next up in the funding news, online meat delivery startup Licious is in talks to raise between $150 and $200 million at an $800 million valuation from Premji Invest, Multiples Asset Management, and Goldman Sachs. These funds might help Licious to expand to smaller cities and towns, and also to open offline locations, as the company had mentioned both of these things during an interview last month. All right, next up in the funding news, car servicing startup GoMechanic is in talks with Tiger Global Management to raise $100 million at a $500 million valuation. GoMechanic currently has tech-enabled car servicing centers in more than 25 cities across India, and they service more than 10,000 cars every single month. So those were all funds that might potentially be raised in the future, but now let's talk about funds that were raised this week. Razorpay has raised $160 million from Sequoia Capital India and GIC at a $3 billion valuation. That's a 3x valuation jump from their $1 billion valuation 6 months ago. Today, more than 5 million businesses use Razorpay, and the company will be utilizing these fresh funds to accelerate their growth in the Southeast Asian market through inorganic growth opportunities. All right, next up in the funding news, cloud data protection startup Druva has raised $147 million from CDPQ at a more than $2 billion valuation. Druva will be using these fresh funds to continue developing innovative products and to strengthen their market leadership as they continue to expand. All right, next up in the funding news, let's talk about India's latest unicorn, Chargebee, which is a startup that helps companies to manage their subscriptions and their billings. Chargebee has raised $125 million at a $1.4 billion valuation, making it India's 10th startup unicorn in 2021. Things in India's unicorn club are starting to get pretty crowded. In 2020, there were only 11 startup unicorns in the entire year, but we're not even 4 months into 2021 yet, and there are already 10 startup unicorns. If India's startup ecosystem is able to keep up the pace for the next couple of years, then its size might be comparable to the United States' startup ecosystem or China's. All right, next up in the funding news, health tech startup Pristyn Care has raised $53 million in a funding round led by Tiger Global Management at a valuation of $550 million. Pristyn Care has more than 100 clinics across 30 cities, and they have 300 surgeons on their team. They're going to be using these fresh funds to expand into new surgery specialties, invest into new medical technologies, and also to expand into new geographies. All right, next up in the funding news, invoice discounting marketplace M1 Exchange has raised $10 million in a funding round led by Amazon. Since 2017, M1 Exchange has discounted invoices worth 170 crore rupees for more than 10,000 micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. They're going to be using these fresh funds to expand beyond the 352 cities that they currently have a presence in, and they're also going to be investing in reaching more micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. All right, that is all the startup news that I have for you guys this week. I hope you enjoyed the video, but more than that, I hope that you all stay safe during this second wave of the pandemic. As always, big thanks to all of our Backstage with Millionaires members, our unicorns and our decacorns. The fact that even during these difficult times, you guys are willing to financially support what we do here at Backstage with Millionaires means a lot to us. Because of this second wave, we've had to put some of the plans that we had on hold until the pandemic dissipates a little bit. But rest assured, once it does, then we're gonna be putting every single rupee which you guys have sent our way to good use. And we have some pretty exciting things planned for the middle and end of this year. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Backstage with Millionaires, and I will see you in the next one.